Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to TEDxUNB 2021, Essence of Humanity. Before we begin our conference for today, I would like to acknowledge that UNB stands on the unsurrendered and unceded lands of the traditional Wolastoqey people. The lands of the Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of traditional peace and friendship treaties that are bounded on friendship, mutual respect, and love among equal nations. The river that flows through our university is called the Woolastoq, along with which live the beautiful and bounty people of this river, the Wolastoqey people. The river is also known as the St. John River. With this, I would like to welcome you all again for TEDxUNB 2021, Essence of Humanity. This year, our team wrestled with the idea, what makes us humans? Using this lens, we have gathered a series of talks, performances, and presentations in which we would see the human curiosity to learn, grow, adapt, fail, dance, and many more. We would also want our delegates to have the curiosity within their own human journey as they leave and understand the fact that even though we are very similar, yet we have different paths in all of our lives. Before I call on our first speaker for today, I would like to remind everyone that masks are mandatory to be worn while moving around the WU Conference Center, as well as if you're not socially distanced from the person next to you. I would also like to remind that cell phones should be kept on a silent while the whole conference is going on. Our first speaker for today is Chantel Barker. Chantel is the peacemaking keeper for First Nations Treaty 2 territory. Chantel's spirit name is Gichi Nodin Ikwe, and she's from the Deer clan. A social advocate as well as
travel across Manitoba and teach identity, teach Indigenous people their history, teach them where they come from, teach them their culture, and teach them about the power they have within. And so with that, I got the opportunity to also go into all the correctional centers. I went into the Federal Correctional Center, Headingley, the Women's, all the youth centers. And just keep in mind that in Manitoba, Indigenous people are overrepresented. There's probably approximately 80% of Indigenous people that are incarcerated. And in the youth center, it's 81%. A few years ago, the University of Manitoba did a research project on the impacts of the CFS system in the justice system. And what they found that 60% of those kids that are in CFS end up in the justice system. And in 2019, there was 11,000 kids in care in Manitoba that were all Indigenous. So now imagine, when these kids grow up, they're going to be entering into a justice system. So being in that, working as a, doing the CAP program, that's what the program was called, the Culturally Appropriate Program that I created for Manitoba Justice. And with that opportunity, I heard many stories. I heard from the survivors of residential schools. I heard from their children. I heard from their grandchildren. And what I started to recognize and learn was the intergenerational impacts. I heard about how the overrepresentation in the different systems as a result of taking away our sovereignty. Because prior to the Indian Act, we had our own systems in place. We had a justice system, we had a health system, we had a CFS system. But it wasn't about power and control, it was always about healing and bringing people back into balance. And so as I traveled across Manitoba, it was a 4-day program, and I would say 3,000 to 3,000 people took the program. And so I heard their pain. I heard about growing up in poverty, growing up with no running water, growing up with addiction, CFS involvement. And when you hear those stories over and over, it hits home. My grandparents went to residential schools. I had teen parents. And so as a result, I didn't know my culture, I didn't know my identity, and I too struggled with addictions in my early 20s. But when I went back to school, I found my identity. I found my personal power. I found that I'm a human being. And so with the spirit of this TED Talk, The Essence of Humanity, those people that I worked with across Manitoba, I heard that they're human beings as well. And so when you start to hear their stories about how they're in that system because of the loss of identity, they're in that system because they don't know who they are. And the Indian Act took control of our people, and then they enforced us onto reservations. And so many people don't know that when they forced us onto the reservations, our ancestors, we weren't allowed to leave. We had to get a permit or a pass system from the Indian agent just to go hunting, to go shopping, to buy something. We had to get permission. Fortunately, that was lifted, those pass and permit systems, but the legacy and the harm of residential schools, the 60s scoop, the day schools, the Indian Act still continues to impact our people. So as a result, even though I created the first mandated healing program, let me let you know that it was also evaluated. So we got an evaluation done on it. So once that was completed, we did an evaluation with adults, women, men, youth, elders, people in community, out of community, incarceration, in the city. And at the end of the day, that evaluation came out that it was 96% effective. So even though it was great that I was able to create a healing program for the people, it wasn't enough to do what needed to be done in our communities to lift the spirit of our people back up. So as a result, I decided to leave Manitoba Justice because I seen that justice system does not work, and as I start to recognize the policies that were continuing to be enforced, that they were going in the wrong direction. So then I told my supervisor, you know what, I don't want to be with Manitoba Justice anymore. I'm going to go create our own justice system for Indigenous people. So that's where I am. I'm at Treaty 2 territory, working for the First Nations Treaty 2 government as a peacemaker. It's kind of cool because I'm originally from the Deer Clan, and the Deer Clan, when you look at our clan systems that were in place prior to contact, the Deer Clan were actually the peacemakers. So it's kind of cool how I went into ceremony to get my spirit name, and now I'm living it in my career. So now I'm there. And so the Treaty 2 territory is located in Manitoba, and it kind of goes into Saskatchewan. Right now, we have 10 local First Nations that are signed on to our government and are promoting peacemaking in their First Nations. So the first thing that we had to do when we were coming up with, well, what kind of system do we want to have in place? Because we can't have the same system that's in place because that system that's right now, the justice system, is not working. So we said, well, we need a system that's about our Anishinaabe values, our culture, our ways of doing things. So I'm just going to read this quote by Black Elk. Circles. You notice that everything an Indian does is in a circle, and that is because the power of the world always works in circles, and everything tries to be round. I heard the sky is round, and I have heard the earth is round like a ball, and so are all the stars. The wind in its greatest power whirls. Birds make their nests in circles, for theirs is the same religion as ours. Even the seasons form a great circle, and they're changing and always coming back again to where they were. The life of a man is in a circle from childhood to childhood, so it is in everything where power moves. Black Elk. And that is an Anishinaabe worldview, that everything goes in a circle. The universe moves in a circle. The galaxy moves in a circle. The world moves in a circle. And even the baby in a mother's womb moves in a circle. So that's where the power needs to come from. So As we created our model, we knew we had to switch from that power and control system, that hierarchy system where people at the top make all the decisions and the people at the bottom have to live with them. So we said we've got to go back to the circle. So we created the peacemaking system based on circles. So I'll just start in the beginning with, in the center, the framework. So this Anishinaabe framework is actually work done by Amy Kraft and John Burrows, who teach at the universities across Canada. And so in the middle of that circle is Minubidasawin. And in our culture, that means that living a good life. And that's our spiritual law, that we all want to live a good life. The outer circle that you see on the outside is our natural laws. So the natural laws that we identify for our system is natural order, peace, harmony, and balance. And balance is especially important because prior to contact, when people were acting out, the elders would say, we don't punish them, we help them, because they're not in balance, and that's why they're acting out. So we're going to surround that individual and give them the love and belonging they need so that they can return to balance. And then on the outer circle is our customary laws. Because across the Anishinaabe territory, every First Nation has different customs. So we want to make sure that we recognize them in our laws, in our creation as well. And then on the outside are the human laws. So the human laws that we have in our local nations, the federal laws, and etc. So that is the Anishinaabe legal framework. And then on the outside are the 7 circles of peacemaking. And the 7 circles of peacemaking, you can call them like departments. Just like we have the justice has the court department, the police department, the probation department. Well, we call ours circles because we are moving away from Western terms. So I'll start with the first, before I move on to the first one, the whole peacemaking system is governed by a peacemaking governing circle who are representatives from the grassroots people. Because we want to make sure that it's grassroots driven up and not top down. So the first circle is the bijou, the link circle. And when you look, and these circles are based on the traditional Anishinaabe governing clan system. And with the clan system, we recognize that each clan comes with different gifts. So the whole system is based on the strengths and the gifts of the people that work in there. So they would be responsible for wellness promotion, early intervention, support services, etc. The next circle, my clan, is the deer circle. They're responsible for restorative peacemaking, sharing circles, healing circles, and wellness plans. So just moving over to the wellness plan. So unlike the Western system, we look at creating, that has risk assessments, we create wellness plans and wellness assessments. So once they do that wellness assessment and plan, then we do a wraparound model where we're able to surround the individual and provide them that love and belonging and support and resources that they need to complete their wellness plan. And then they take that wellness plan over to the Eagle Circle. And then the Eagle Circle does all the interventions and programming, land-based activities, teachings, storytelling, programming, etc. And the goal of that is to try to keep those first 3 circles within the local nations so that they don't have to leave their home to go get services. So the whole point is to try to keep them in there without notifying the Turtle Circle, who is responsible for our law center and registry. So for some reason, if they decide, well, you know what, I'm not going to complete my wellness plan, then the Turtle Circle is notified and they identify which laws were broken. Is it the law of harmony? Is it the law of peace? What law has been broken? And then once they identify that, they inform the Bear Circle. And the Bear Circle are our peacekeepers. And the peacekeepers are like police. That's where they ensure and enforce the laws. And then even within that circle are the sub-circles. So we have the sun bear, the red bear, the white bear, and the black bear. And each one of those also come with strengths and gifts and how to do peacekeeping within each First Nation. And we want our peacekeepers to have a positive approach to the people, and we want our people to be able to go to them, not run from them. And then, of course, we can't have a legal system unless we have a court system. But we're moving away from those court systems, and we call them the Loon Circle. The Loon Circle is responsible for criminal law, family law, civil law, youth law, etc. So the difference between the regular court system in that triangle is that everybody sits in a circle and they go over the wellness plan. And there is a judge there. The judge sits there with the people and finds out, okay, what happened here? Why do we need to extend your time? Why didn't you complete your wellness plan? And then maybe they need to order them, just like the court does with probation services. And then if the person feels like they haven't been treated fairly, then they go to the crane circle. And the crane circles are appeals, but it's also our grandmother's circle, because traditionally, Anishinaabe culture, the grandmothers were the final say. If there was anything happening in the local nations, the grandmothers would come together and their word was final. And so just like the current system that has appeals, people can appeal, but the goal, once again, is to bring them back into the circle so that they can return back to the deer circle and complete that wellness plan, because it's all about healing. And if they decide, you know what, I don't want to complete my wellness plan, well, then maybe banishment is our last resort. And so with this system, we want to rebuild and renew. Because as we see, we have intergenerational impacts that are pulling us down. Now it's about breaking that cycle and building us up, so that one day in 4 generations, that our great-grandchildren will understand that they too are humans, and if they believe, they can achieve. Thank you. Before I leave, as it is in Anishinaabe customaries, when we go into other territories, we bring a gift in friendship and peace. So I'd like to call the chairs to come up and receive this gift on behalf of Treaty 2 territory. You want to just pull it out? So it's All Children Matter with our Treaty 2 territory logo here, and hopefully you'll find a great place in the university to put it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chantel, for such a lovely talk. Up next, we have Callista Wilson, who is a 4th-year UNB student here, majoring in environmental management and biology. Today, Callista is going to talk to us about her experiences, as well as what is often amplified, what is not amplified, but often overlooked as a very grave disease and illness. Callista's talk is titled, Eating Disorders. Let's talk about it. Before Callista takes the stage, I would like to remind that since Callista's talk is going to talk about eating disorders, which might be a heavy topic for any of our delegates or attendees, please feel free to step out to the foyer, where one of our conference executives would be there for more chill atmosphere. Therefore, please welcome Callista.
All right, okay, now we're on. Oh, that was sharp. All right, okay, so I think we're good? Yeah? Okay, sweet. All right, well, hi everyone. My name is Callista, or most of you may know me by Callie. Anyway, I like to think I can create a little chill environment in here, so thanks for sticking around. And I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that most of you probably don't remember what you had to eat for lunch last Monday, or maybe dinner on Thursday a couple weeks ago. Most of us go through our life fueling our bodies with whatever we deem available and desirable at the time. Burgers, granola bars, you name it. It is ingrained in our human nature to seek out these food and other resources to keep all of our internal systems running smoothly. This is one of the reasons why I find illnesses such as anorexia nervosa so fascinating. The human brain has actually evolved an ability to overpower all of our other natural instincts and convince the rest of our body to defy everything evolution has taught it, just through the simple deprivation of the chemical energy it needs to survive. This voice takes up resonance in the brains of many individuals suffering from anorexia and will scold you for doing exactly what you are biologically programmed to do. This loud and obnoxious voice was actually given a name in my household, and his name is Ed. Ed will remind you what you had to eat for lunch last Monday and dinner last Thursday with so much detail that he might as well be constructing a graphic novel replay of every cracker and crumb that has ever crossed your lips. Not only is Ed just plain annoying to be cohabitating with, but he is also a serial killer. Yep, you heard me right. Ed is the new Ted Bundy. Every 1 in 10 individuals suffering from anorexia will fall victim to Ed's killing spree. So, why is anorexia still one of the least talked about mental illnesses to date? It is a disease that has been plagued by more than just a brutal sounding name. This silent, deadly, and debilitating mental illness is still seen in the eyes of many as a choice of the individual who is suffering. However, I would definitely not be the first survivor to tell you that I did not invite Ed into my life with open arms. He has been a parasite among women in my family for over 3 generations and was already destined to become intertwined into being a part of my upbringing. I've been scared to share with others the details regarding the boundaries Ed has built up about what food I'm actually allowed to put into my body. Scared out of facing shame, ridicule, and a misunderstanding, because society still sees this topic as rather taboo. A society that just happens to favor white, blonde, skinny individuals. Needless to say, my so-called illness was never taken very seriously. And I believe that it is important to recognize that there is a significant amount of privilege associated with having an eating disorder, as numerous studies have indicated that they are very isolated to mainly Western individualistic cultures. I've never had a shortage of high-quality, healthy, fresh food available for me to just simply decline. Willpower was actually seen as a desirable trait in my household, and I was given praise for not gorging on dessert right before dinner. That being said, mental illness itself is never desirable, but I can stand here today and share these struggles about food with you, but actually having food available for me to eat has never been one of them. It's important to recognize that the color of my skin has also undoubtedly had a role in the way I've received treatment. People of color are substantially less likely to be diagnosed with a mental illness than a white individual, and even more likely to have their concerns about their health addressed by a healthcare professional. If it weren't for the color of my skin, hair, and eyes, I honestly may not be standing here before you to tell this story. And there is something very wrong with that. Eating disorders may be geographically isolated. However, they are very common among the university population, as many studies have shown that over 90% of female university students practice some form of restrictive eating during their time at school. The effect of these harmful food-oriented rituals continues to escalate as social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook continue to emphasize the importance of being thin. Take Tinder, for example. A standout feature among our society has quite literally placed an equal sign between love and looks. Eating disorders are currently the leading cause of death among all mental illnesses. Yet, only 3 paragraphs of my 500-page first-year psychology textbook were dedicated to discussing this obviously serious topic. And I believe that our generation is finally starting to address some of these issues that many generations before us have just constantly swept under the rug. And I think eating disorders definitely needs to be one of them. So let's start talking about it. Let's start talking about how you are not alone and how this ugly voice named Ed doesn't classify who you are as a person. This is where I'm starting, right here at this TEDx conference, to talk about how we can destigmatize the word anorexia. Secondly, we need to make resources available on campus. I cannot begin to describe the frustration I've experienced trying to locate any psychologist, counselor, dietitian who is specialized in eating disorder prevention and relapse treatment. It's hard enough for many to admit that they need tools to help them on their journey to recovery, let alone when those tools are locked away in a steel box with a heavy-duty padlock. Something both you and I can do is work towards changing the dialogue and switching the narrative. Phrases such as pulling trig may just be that for some people, triggering. And the words like puking and rallying are more for some people than just another part of a fun Friday night out. And by us classifying these toxic tendencies as so normal, we are invalidating the daily struggles of someone battling their own Ed voice. The list of toxic terms doesn't stop there. And as I stand here before you today, trying to be open about something that I am still very ashamed of, I would like to ask all you to do one thing. Check in on your friends, your family, your loved ones. Without a solid support system, few things can be accomplished in terms of mending a wounded relationship with food and silencing the devilish voice of Ed. Even more importantly, we need to ask each other the tough questions and ask them regardless of your physical appearance. So, ask your loved ones and allow them to tell you. In many cases, simply providing support and encouragement can be the key to unlocking that recovery box and enabling so many to take those first few steps towards recovery that they may have been fearful of ever taking before. Thank you.
Thank you for that amazing talk, Alista. Up next, we don't have a talk, but rather a musical segment for us. Ben, Trin, and Koi would be performing a set of 3 songs over here. Please welcome them.
Alright, hi everyone. So the first song that we'll bring is called My Everything, and it's a Vietnamese song about love, so I hope you guys like it. Em đang hát về người yêu dấu ơi, có nghe chăng? Em đem tiếng cười bờ môi ai ra trốn đây. Những giây phút ghi chặt tay nhau, những câu nói thì thầm bên tai bấy lâu. Mùi hương thân quen còn in trên vạt áo. Em sẽ nói anh nghe về đại dương xanh. Em sát anh nghe bản tình ca em với anh. Ta sẽ nắm tay nhau đi chung trên từng con phố quen. Yeah, yeah. La 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 la. You are my everything. La 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 la. You're enough, the best to me. La 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 la. You are my everything. Oh, la 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 la. You're enough, the best to me. Em luôn ước mình được ôm lấy anh mỗi sớm mai. Trao anh những lời ngọt ngào thiết tha. Oh my boy. Những tia nắng vàng sau cơn mưa. Những con phố hàng ngày đi xa đón đưa. Mùi hương thân quen còn in trên vạt áo. La Em sẽ nói anh nghe về đại dương xanh. Em sát anh nghe bản tình ca em với anh. Ta sẽ nắm tay nhau đi chung trên từng con phố quen. Yeah, yeah. La 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 la. You are my everything. La 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 la. You're enough, the best of me. Sometimes you make me cry, but I don't wanna say goodbye. Ooh. Em sẽ nói anh nghe về đại dương xanh. Em sát anh nghe bản tình ca em với anh. Ta sẽ nắm tay nhau đi chung trên từng con phố quen. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So the next song that we'll bring is an English song that I think most of us will know. It's Top of the World by the Carpenters. Such a feeling coming over me. There is wonder in most everything I see. Not a cloud in the sky, got the suns in my eyes, and I won't be surprised if it's a dream. Everything I want the world to be is now coming true, especially for me. And the reason is clear, it's because you are here. You're the nearest thing to heaven that I've seen. I'm on the top of the world looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found ever since you've been around. Your love put me at the top of the world. Something in the wind has learned my name and is telling me that things are not the same. In the leaves on the trees, in the touch of a breeze, there's a pleasing sense of happiness for me. There is only one wish on my mind. When this day is through, I hope that I will find that tomorrow will be just the same for you and me. All I needed will be mine if you are here. I'm on the top of the world looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found ever since you've been around. Your love put me at the top of the world. I'm on the top of the world looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found ever since you've been around. Your love put me at the top of the world. Your love put me at the top of the world. Thank you. So the last song that we'll bring is a Vietnamese song again, and it's about love this time, but actually for a breakup.
Maybe just be 1 sec. I forgot to bring my cable.
Yeah. I hope you guys like the song that we performed so far. It's been a long time since I've on the stage performing. I think it's probably been since COVID. So we're actually very nervous, but we're excited to be here. Yeah, so here's the last song. I hope you guys enjoy. Vẫn những câu hỏi nhỏ sau bao tháng chia ly, anh vẫn thường thắc mắc khi anh không làm gì. Em dạo này còn xem phim một mình. Em dạo này có đồ ăn và shopping. Ngày xuân em có xuống phố không người và tán dương cỏ cây lặng thinh. Em dạo này còn đi cuối tuần. Em dạo này có cà phê và xuân. Hàng đêm em có nghe hát xa xăm từ quán ăn phù du ngoài sân. Và tình yêu, và tình yêu, và tình yêu mới. Dạo này người ta có khiến em cười. Và tiền tiêu, và quần áo, và đồ chơi mới. Xin nhớ thay nuông chiều làm ta lười hơn. Anh dù không muốn tình cờ gặp lại nhau lần nữa, nhưng em có đi trà đá Hồ Gươm. Dạo này em có đi trà đá Hồ Gươm. Du 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 do be do 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 và tình yêu và người yêu mới. Hay giờ em đã có chồng rồi. Và tiền tiêu và quần áo và đồ chơi mới. Xin nhớ thay nuông chiều làm ta hồi xuân. Anh dù không muốn tình cờ gặp lại nhau lần nữa, nhưng em có đi trà đá Hồ Gươm. Dạo này em có đi trà đá Hồ Gươm. Anh dù không muốn tình cờ gặp lại nhau lần nữa, nhưng em có đi trà đá Hồ Gươm. Dạo này em có đi trà đá Hồ Gươm. Du 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 bi du bi du 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 du. All right. Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you for that lovely musical performance. Before we move on to our networking segment, we have one more speaker for today. Rochelle Witherspoon is an academic librarian here at the university. Well aware of the facts leading to misinformation and false information being prevalent on the internet, she initially set out to understand what causes people to fall prey to this false information, while other people do not. In conclusion, she was shocked to find that these two groups have a lot more in common than we feel. In her talk titled, Understanding Science Denial and What Can We Do About It, Rochelle will challenge the delegates their own questions and beliefs upon information gathering, as well as some key principles in persuasion that focus not just on facts, but the foundations on which belief is formed. Please welcome Rochelle.
Test. We're good? All right. So I'd like to start this talk with a thought experiment. I want you to pretend, for a minute, that some powerfully held belief of yours is actually false. And I don't mean just an opinion. I mean a fact that you hold as incontrovertibly true. For example, if you believe in climate change, pretend that you are wrong and just don't know it. Or, if you don't believe in climate change, pretend the same, that you are wrong and just don't know it. The purpose of this exercise is not whether your belief is correct or not, so set that aside and just focus on imagining that your truth is, in fact, false. As you imagine this, I want you to think about the things that have caused you to believe as you do. Why do you believe this thing? Did someone you trust tell you about it? Do the people you spend time with believe it? Do your news sources agree with it? Did you research it yourself? And, if you did what you find agree with you? Regardless of your belief, your answer to all of these questions is probably yes, even if you and the person beside you hold the exact opposite beliefs. Now ask yourself, what would it take for someone to change your mind? If you hold something to be true, how much persuasion would it take for someone to convince you that you were wrong? How receptive would you be to that persuasion? And most importantly, is it even possible for someone to change your mind, no matter how persuasive they are? It's a little uncomfortable, isn't it? Really imagine, changing your stance on climate change and then telling people about it. What would that conversation look like? There are some very real social consequences to changing our beliefs. And when it comes to ourselves, we are viscerally aware of this. We understand that it will create tensions in our social groups and that it can damage relationships that we value. We know this. We know that this is how it works. But somehow we forget it when the people we're talking to don't believe as we believe. We don't really consider why they might hold a given belief or what that belief might mean to them on a personal level. We don't respect the social costs to them if they reject the beliefs of their community. But that's what we need to start doing, because our beliefs are part of our identity. So threats against our beliefs are often perceived as threats against ourselves, and we respond defensively to them. And because we tend to identify with groups and to hold beliefs within those groups, an attack against our beliefs doesn't only threaten us as individuals, but also the people we respect and connect with. And that makes our responses to these threats all the more potent. As journalist David Roberts put it, human beings are not primarily rational creatures. We are primarily social creatures. We are born into specific social contexts, overlapping tribes from which we absorb our worldviews and values. We do not reason to it at all. We inherit it. Because belonging to tribes is fundamental to our well-being, these markers become very important to us. Protecting them is adaptive behavior among our most basic interests. So we have this initial bias to believe what the people around us believe, and then we're confronted with someone else's facts, and we don't like it. So we do two things. First, we avoid. We control the facts that we encounter so that most of what we see and read supports our preconceived beliefs. And this is very easy to do. Information filters in our social media and search engines are specifically designed to bring us things they know we'll like, making avoidance not only possible, but convenient. Second, failing our ability to control the facts that we encounter, we will tend to dismiss, dispute, and deny information that goes against our beliefs. We may reject it for its source, its references, the author, and his, her, or their credentials. We might look them up in Google to see what other people have to say about them and their work, going to lengths that we would never bother with if the person agreed with us. So, if we dispute, reject, and avoid information that goes against our beliefs, and we do this in order to protect our identity and the people we identify with, the question becomes, what next? If climate change is real, we need to convince people to take action against it. Or, if vaccines are safe, we need to convince people of that. But how do we do it? First of all, we don't do it like this. Because that kind of interaction doesn't often lead to this. To be fair, though, not many interactions do. But our immediate assumption that people who don't believe as we believe are deluded or unintelligent is not conducive to an open dialogue. So let's bring up a few other options and talk about how they might be received. Facts don't work. Because what makes a fact compelling is trust in its source, and different people trust different sources. Consider the guy in my comic. He doesn't trust Big Pharma, so you pointing to research produced by major pharmaceutical companies is not going to convince him of anything. So when I say facts don't work, what I mean is you can't make someone believe what you believe for the reasons you believe it. That's not how identity or social interactions work. One of the things to keep in mind with science deniers in general is that they're not bad people. In the case of anti-vaxxers, they're often acting out of a genuine fear of the vaccine, either for themselves or for their child. Vaccines are full of scary ingredients. Their side effects, though rare, can be severe. And a lot of people are telling them that vaccinating their child is going to hurt them. It can seem pretty rational in that context to decide to take the small chance that the child gets sick with a rare virus, and the even smaller chance that virus has lasting effects, rather than expose them to a potentially harmful vaccine that they don't understand and don't trust. One of the ways to deal with this mistrust of vaccines, then, is to personalize. Make the disease and its consequences real. Talk about actual cases, because making things real and personal changes the balance of that fear and mistrust. When you tell someone about the nurse who took measles back home to her child and what that family ended up going through, you start to make the disease scarier than the vaccine. And while that might not change an anti-vaxxer's mind, it might make them doubt their position. Another approach to changing people's minds is from within the group. We care more about what our people say than we do about the words of people we don't identify with. It's very easy to dismiss a stranger who believes differently from us. But when that person is a friend or a family member, it's different. While they might not succeed in changing our minds or changing our positions, we're going to spend more time thinking about their belief and where it came from and how justified it is than we would if that person were not a member of our group. And this effect isn't limited to people we connect directly with either, and can be even more pronounced when the person speaking is a respected icon in one of our groups. If you're an anti-vaxxer and someone you respect, like a news anchor or a particularly popular politician, tells you that vaccines are safe and explains to you why you should take one, or why you should get it, you're going to be more likely to listen to that advice than the same advice coming from a big pharma vaccine researcher. This one's tricky, though. It's rare for people to speak out against the beliefs of their group, because doing so can damage their position within that group and even cause them to be ejected from it. So it takes a special kind of person and a special kind of balance to make these types of arguments effectively. Lastly, framing your argument in a way that decreases its perceived threat can increase a person's willingness to change their mind. And what I mean by this is, in the case of vaccine science, change your argument from one that focuses on science and big pharma and authority to one that focuses on something else that the person you're speaking with values. For instance, you might focus on a belief they hold in the sanctity of all life. Or if the person is a business person, you might talk about the vast economic importance of vaccines. The goal of this kind of argument is to redirect the focus away from whatever it is that is blocking their belief in a direction that validates another aspect of their identity, thereby allowing them to act without threat. So really, the core of effective persuasion is respect and validation. We need to meet people where they are, beliefs, and therefore their personal and group identities with respect, and give them reasons to change that align with their values. And even doing all of these things, we still might not succeed. But opening that dialogue at a personal level, and ultimately at a societal one, is a vital step in the path to change. Thank you. This back up there. I give this back up there.
Thank you for your talk, Rochelle. We will now have a speed networking session where all of you folks have an opportunity to meet each other as well as discuss all the fantastic talks for the day. How will this work is if you have a delegate bag with the blue ribbon on it, you will remain seated, while if you have a delegate bag with the green ribbon attached to it, you will move around the auditorium. Each pairing will have 10 minutes to discuss the 4 prompts found in the delegate bags. In the end, you will discuss with 3 new people. We will give you a heads up when the time is to switch the partners within the time. Thank you. Hi everyone. By any chance, if a person or a delegate has not received a tape on their bag, you can just stand up and you guys can connect with each other who else does not have a tape on their delegate bag. Hello, everyone. So that concludes our networking session for now. Feel free to keep networking outside the foyer as well, and we'll continue our talks in the next 15 minutes. You can grab a snack. We have a photo booth right there. You can click awesome pictures. So see you guys back in 15 minutes. Thank you. The talks will resume at 1:45. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a good networking session. Our next performance is by a dance group called UNB Natch. They're going to perform a dance coordination of Collywood and Bollywood dances. Please welcome UNB Natch. Thank you for such an electrifying performance, UNB Natch. Our next speaker is Harrison Dressler, a fourth-year art student at UNB, completing an honors degree in history and political science. Harrison has a passion for studying late modern labor history and multifaceted ways in which imperialism has impacted our lives today. With his works being published in magazines and blogs, such as UNB's own Atlantic Loyalist Connections. His talk titled Intellectual Property is Destroying Our Creativity would look at the history of being creative as well as how it is affected in today's society. Therefore, please welcome Harrison.
All right. Hello, everyone. I come here today with a bit of a paradox. On the one hand, I intend to argue that humanity's greatest essence is creativity. Creativity is that process in which human beings enact physical changes in the natural world. These can include in the relationships we nurture, in the technologies we invent, and the art we dream up. On the other hand, I will be upfront with the fact that I've never had an original thought in my entire life. I consider myself to be a fairly creative person. I like to read, write, research, and every now and then I like to write music for fun. But still, I will maintain that I've never had an original idea in my entire life, and neither has anybody else. I imagine it'd be a good time to point to some of the most influential minds of the past. The Marie Curies, Albert Einsteins, Nikola Teslas, and Sojourner Truth of the world. This is just a tiny selection of some of world history's greatest thinkers. They too have never had an original idea in their entire lives. Mark Twain once wrote to Helen Keller about much of the same. He says, "As if there is much of anything in any human utterance, oral or written, except plagiarism. For the kernel, the soul of all human utterances is plagiarism. For substantially all ideas are secondhand, consciously and unconsciously drawn from a million outside sources." I generally subscribe to a field of philosophy known as materialism. Materialism, at its core, argues that the material physical world exists primary to all other aspects of life, including thoughts, ideas, the mind, consciousness, and free will itself. As a preconditioned materialism, this world exists before human beings and will exist after. Our role as humans, then, is to exert our influence on the natural world for better or for worse. To take a bit of a philosophical detour for a moment, I will ask the following. What, if anything, makes us uniquely human? For one, human beings seem to exhibit certain innate drives or instincts. These include drives to eat, sleep, live, love, and exist. These are not uniquely human, but exist among all life on Earth. My pet cat Scout likes to eat, sleep, and defecate just as much as I do, if not a little bit more. What she does not seem to exhibit is a drive to creatively express herself. She does not pursue creative tasks for the process of creativity itself. This is uniquely human. It also relies on the material world. It is collective, in the sense that it includes the day you stubbed your toe, graduated from university, and had your first kiss. It is a process in which human beings take what was left over by other people and reshape it into something different. This is our essence of humanity. The collective cooperation of human beings and nature for the continual revision of both. In short, we are the material world, and the material world is us. For much of human history, creativity and productivity operated on a fundamentally collective and public basis. Recent anthropological data has actually shown that life within pre-industrial societies was overwhelmingly abundant. It was this abundance in resources like land, water, air, and crops that allowed people, artisans, farmers, and producers to fulfill their creative desires as they saw fit. To fulfill their daily needs day by day. It was actually only beginning in the 16th century that British lords and ladies began to enclose large subsets of previously public and collective land, taking it, retracting it from the peasantry, and giving it into the hands of a fewer and fewer aristocratic elite. This era saw the rise of the world's first working class, a group of people who had no means to subsist other than by selling their labor to a prominently wealthy landlord. For the first time in history, our essence of humanity was constrained. Today, the same process of enclosure is operating on a new front, this time in the form of ideas, the mind, thoughts themselves. It comes in the form of intellectual property law, and it has three distinct effects on our creative capacities. The first being that it tends to lead to the underuse of technologies and ideas among people who stand to benefit from them the most. Take, for example, the skyrocketing prices of goods like university textbooks, scholarly journals, magazines, and newspapers. The price of these materials is all hugely inflated because of the artificial scarcity imposed by intellectual property law. It's further ironic that the funds used to pay for these grants, public grants, government grants, are often paid for by the same people who generally don't have access to these materials in the first place. The areas of global health are similarly affected. For example, golden rice was a grain of rice that scientists use to increase its rates and concentrations of vitamin A. It was meant to combat child blindness and child mortality in the global south. However, its production and distribution in the area was made hugely unprofitable by certain patent laws and legal regulations. We are in the process of coming out of a COVID-19 pandemic. Before COVID-19, epidemics including HIV, hepatitis, and other diseases like malaria and Ebola had devastating impacts in countries in the global south. Just as before, the medicines used to treat these diseases were made hugely unprofitable to sell among people who needed them most. Intellectual property, therefore, tends to harm the world's sick, the world's hungry, and the world's poor the most. The second effect I'd like to talk about is that intellectual property laws and their enactment tend to lead people to share ideas much less. For an idea to remain profitable, it has to be scarce. For an idea to be scarce, it has to be owned by a single individual, either one person or more often an individual company or corporation. Since it is owned by a company or corporation, it is hoarded for oneself, for the good of profit. This discounts collective research at the expense of genuine progress. I actually have some quantitative data to back this up too, because recent research undertaken by scholars Michael Heller and Rebecca Eisenberg have actually found that within the last few decades, researchers at universities have become more and more preoccupied with securing patents for their work at the expense of genuine research itself. These patents act as innovatory roadblocks, red tape, that encloses large subsets of previously public knowledge and made them inaccessible for further research. The quest for knowledge, therefore, has been effectively replaced by quest for ownership. Both of these effects have had devastating impacts on our creative potentials as human beings. One of the most noticeable areas is in the arts, film, television, and music. The way our current paradigm functions, most artists generally do not own the work that they actually produce. Instead, it is subject to the demands of corporations, producers, and executives, and often property law itself. For example, musician John Fogerty once released a batch of songs that his label deemed to sound too much like his previous material. He was sued. He was effectively sued for sounding like himself. We effectively tell artists that they cannot capture the world as it actually exists. In film and television, entire scenes have been scrapped and entire movies postponed because bits of property have been seen in passing shots. These include maybe a car, a logo, a bit of architecture like a home or a building. We tell artists that they cannot capture the natural world. They can only capture a perversion of this world, which has been artificially sterilized, to remove anything that might be deemed the product of someone else. To quote American film director Davis Guggenheim, "The cost for me is creativity. Suddenly the world that you're trying to create is completely generic and void of the elements that you would normally create." The advent of intellectual property law, therefore, is eerily akin to being put in a locked white room and being told that all other external influences simply do not exist. They're not yours to use, they're only mine to sell. Now, I'm aware that this can all sound quite dire when I shoot it off rapid fire like that, but there are some very specific things that we should have in mind to combat these issues. Within the last 20 years, the length of time in which patents and intellectual property have been allowed to be imposed has risen, ballooned exponentially out of control. Some can last almost as long as 100 years. Our first most direct political goal should be to drastically reduce these times. Instead of thinking centuries, we should be thinking decades, if not a number of years. Where should these materials go? We have a spot for them. It's called the Creative Commons. Once our materials enter the Creative Commons, they enter the public, unenclosed domain. They can be used in the creative projects of artists and individuals for their own need. Obviously, there's some certain rules in place. You cannot simply reproduce someone else's work and call it your own. Therefore, I believe that the faster our creative goods are allowed to enter this unenclosed public space, the faster our essence of humanity can be restored, bit by bit. It's important to remember while we're talking about big ideas like this, like property law, intellectual property, it's important to remember that these laws have been implemented by governments. They can therefore be retracted by governments. But governments often do not make changes themselves. Governments only change if a grassroots base of activists care enough to make them change. I fear if we do not care enough to make them change, then our art, our technologies, our creative essence, and our essence of humanity itself might just hang in the balance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your talk, Harrison. Our next speaker is Terry Kingston. Terry took on the role as a caregiving advocate after her husband was diagnosed with an incurable disease in 2012. Sharing stories of courage and compassion is an integral part of the talks that she gives to me. Her talk titled, Can We Live Better by Talking About Dying, would re-evaluate and encourage people to think how we see and view death. Please welcome our next speaker, Terry Kingston. Before Terry comes on stage, I would like to notice that since Terry's talk would handle a heavy topic which might not be comfortable with all of our attending delegates, please feel free to reach out and any of our executives in the foyer for a more chill atmosphere. Thank you.
For the 12 years that Harry and I lived together, we lived in a small house across from a beautiful lake. We had French doors in the kitchen that opened out onto a deck where we could watch the weather change and the sun bounce across the waves. The heart of our home, though, was our kitchen table. Harry loved to cook, and he loved to celebrate by spreading out every special occasion he possibly could. He would set the table for any holiday, any birthday, any celebration. His greatest joy was inviting family over or having our friends to gather around the table. And then he would just create the most marvelous feast. I honestly thought over the years that our kitchen table had these magical properties. I felt that if we could sit down across from each other at the table, we could solve anything. And it was where we started the conversations that developed the deep bond that we shared. We spent a lot of time at that table. It's where we started our days in the morning and where we ended our day at the end after our very stressful government jobs. And on the whole, life was good. We had a great time. And then, 6 years into our marriage, Harry got sick. He was diagnosed with a severe and incurable heart and lung condition. When we got back to the house after hearing what the doctors had to say, the first thing we did was sit down at that table across from each other, pour out some wine, and start digesting what this was going to mean for us. Our initial relief at finally figuring out why he was feeling so awful became changed into no disease was going to define us. We would beat this, and that together we would live out the best life we could for as long as we possibly could. This became how we got through all of this. And so we worked at it, and we felt, and we created stories around what this would mean for us moving forward. We gathered people around our table, and we set out the table and set out feasts for them. And it was those conversations around the table that helped us to deal with things as they got progressively worse in Harry's illness. But still, life was good. And then the wonderful treatments he was on became progressively less effective, and the side effects became increasingly more severe, and our conversations started to become more somber. We started to pepper our phrases with, well, what if this happens? And what are we going to do when that happens? And how would we keep going? But once again, it was our friends gathering around the table that saved us. They came in and helped us answer some of those questions. And it was those conversations that nurtured and nourished us as our journey continued. At some point, we decided that things were getting much more worse than we had expected and far more quickly than we had expected. There's a time in an illness when you need to face facts head on. And it seemed like with all the feasts and all the glory we were having, While we're facing Harry's death head on, we were living life more fully than we had done before. And that's what sustained us as well. And so it came to a point where we had to ask for more help. The medical interventions were getting more severe. We needed more trained medical people to come in and help us. And we needed to have support. I didn't know anything about an end-of-life journey when we started this journey with Harry. But I learned by reading. I learned by getting support from people around us. I learned by listening very deeply to what Harry had to say and to what he was too afraid to say. And I learned by listening gently and with a great deal of love to what he would need from me next. As the medical situation worsened, he ended up having more and longer prolonged stays in the hospital and more medical interventions and some really nasty procedures. I would come home alone after spending the day in the hospital with him, and I would sit at that kitchen table alone. And I can tell you that the conversations I had with myself when I was alone were some of the most difficult that I had to face. After one particularly challenging prolonged stay, Harry sat down across from me at our kitchen table, handed me a hot cup of aromatic coffee, and looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Terry, it's time for us to talk about the final steps. What is that going to look like? Where will it happen? And here's what I'm going to need from you in the months to come." Well, the coffee may have warmed my hands, but those words chilled my heart. We had been preparing for this for years. I was not prepared for this. But is anyone, even when you know death is coming, it's still really hard to face it head on, isn't it? And so it was such a challenging thing to be able to walk through that path with Harry. I pulled out everything I had ever learned. We decided that we would need more people around us over and over again, and we brought in different circles of friends this time. And maybe that's him calling to say, what's going on here? He was always bugging me about stuff. Anyway, and now I've totally lost where I am in the talk, but that's okay. So once we figured out that the final phase was there, and we decided we needed to really pull in the resources that were going to get us through this stage, one of the things that we realized is that we needed to pull in the palliative care team and get them to start the process that he would need to get him through to the end of his life. But there was still time for one final feast, and we knew this time we were going to need an even bigger table. And so we went to one of our favorite restaurants where we had had some of our bigger birthday and anniversary celebrations. And we brought in those same friends that had stayed with us over and over again around the table. And one by one, they stood up and told Harry stories about how much his life had meant to them. They filled him with stories up to the brim. And even though our hearts were aching with what was to come, we all felt the support that was there through those stories. It was incredible. Now, one of the many reasons people steer away from end-of-life conversations is they're often afraid that by talking about death will bring death closer. Whereas research tells us what actually happens is by speaking about this kind of death in this kind of community, we help each other understand and face what it will be like to deal with our own death or the deaths of those we love. We need stronger people all the time to do this more and more. I'm hoping I never have to stand on a stage again and somebody says, we need a trigger alert because someone's going to talk about death. Because what we want is for it to become normal, for us to face those hard emotions, to have those difficult conversations. I'm not a trained medical profession of any kind. I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm a grandmother. And yes, I'm a widow who has had to face one too many final goodbyes. Now, psychologists tell us that mental resilience is a skill that can be developed that helps us face adversity, trauma, tragedy, and threats and unusual circumstances. And I'm pretty much thinking that's what we deal with every day right now with COVID, right? But that ability to have mental resilience is what we need to develop in order to face death gently. And so psychologists tell us it's a learned skill. I say it's an end-of-life skill. And it is something that we need more people all the time to be able to develop. I believe, from what I've learned following Harry through that journey, from our lovely marriage to 12 years later, saying our final goodbyes, that mental resilience is what helped me get through that journey and the support that I had. What you need, though, is to be able to tap into your own resources, your own local hospice associations, grief support groups around you, and your own friends and family. But the biggest thing is to learn to face death gently. We soften the fear of death when we stare it in the face. I do believe we live life more fully when we talk about death more gently and more easily. And I know that this is something that can be part of everyday life. We're facing more death these days than we've ever had to face. And so I encourage you to start the support groups within your own family. Have these conversations with your family and friends. Gather people around your kitchen table. Spread out your best tablecloth. Bring out your best china. Pour the wine. Invite the guests in. And start your own final fabulous feast. You'll never, ever regret it.
Thank you for that amazing talk, Cherry. Up next, we have a musical performance by Marcel Pafam and Maria Mason. Please welcome them. Thank you for that incredible performance, Maria and Marcel. Moving on to our last speaker for today's TEDx conference is Jerna Luitel. Jerna is a fourth-year computer science student minoring in business administration here at UNB. She has a passion for advocating for underrepresented groups and communities at campus and has been able to propagate the virtues of diversity and inclusion among the community members through her various leadership roles on campus. Her talk is titled Spirituality, the Essence to My Connection, will share her spiritual journeys and its vast implications. Please welcome our last speaker, Jerna Luitel.
Testing. Okay. I remember to the day when, after my first tiring session at the gym, I wondered if today I would embark on a journey to attain the ultimate level of fitness. For me, it was just to get those rock-solid, heart-punching six-pack abs. Makes me sound a bit sad over here, but truly, I embarked on a well-thought, extremely focused, and dedicated session of 40 minutes. After the session, I was only complaining to my gym friend, why don't I have abs? I just worked out. Funny enough, his sarcastic comment got embedded in my head, as he replied with a smile, oh, we all have abs. We just need to train and condition them to make it visible on our stomach. I reflect back to this incident only to connect with today's talk, as how spirituality resides within everyone, just like abs. Spirituality, in basic term, means to focus on human spirit in itself, which is devoid of all the physical and materialistic virtues. For me, it was a sense of understanding that helped me remove a curtain of layers filled with negative and intrusive thoughts. With the pandemic being extremely difficult for everyone, my mind was spared nonetheless. It almost became certain, as if negative thought had become a usual part of my life. When I actually experienced anxiety for the first time, I never knew I would know the true essence of spirituality within me. And yeah, it was not enlightenment, or else I would not have been here. Yet, what I discovered was something not less than revolutionary. It was a special moment, as I experienced both emotional and mental stability. It made me think as how I'm a human with a distinct essence that now has a presence. A question within everyone's mind might be how to achieve it. Believe me, I felt like that too, where instead of answers, my mind boggled over more and more questions every day. Just like the modern-day Julius Caesar, I discovered, I acted, and then I recovered. However, for something to last is to save the present and accept the past. What helped me start this journey were some good old-fashioned Google searches that helped me map my way out of the situation. And yeah, it's not a map or like a Google search map. Here, my map stands for meditation, affirmation, and purposeful journaling. These are the three core techniques that helped me map my way out of a difficult situation. Now, I'll ask all the delegates here to look at their delegates kit and take out a scroll, which is there, and also a pencil. When you open the scroll, you'll see something like this. There are like 3 stops there. First, meditation, second, affirmation, and third, purposeful journaling. Let's go to our first stop. That is meditation. Let me all take you on a little meditation tour. Firstly, just relax your body and close your eyes. And think about what led you here today. Now we'll do a little exercise. Keep closing your eyes. We are going to take 3 deep breaths in and out. We are going to inhale from our nose and exhale from our mouth. Let's all do it together. First, inhale. Exhale. Second, inhale. Exhale. Third, inhale. Exhale. Now you all can open your eyes. Great job, everyone. Don't you feel a lot more present? Quoted under the American Scientific Journal, breathing technique helps stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system by diverting our attention from negative attributes to positive. It helps you find your true essence. If you wear an Apple Watch, you must have noticed an application named Breathe. This also shows how a global tech company like Apple is understanding the importance of breathing technique and is incorporating in their watches. When I was going through the tough time, I just used to do this exercise when I used to feel a bit anxious. And after I did this, I felt a lot more focused, present, and I could live in the moment. Moving on, let's go to our second stop, that is affirmation. If you look at the column affirmation, you would notice 3 blanks present in it. I would request you all to fill it with your most positive and happiest thoughts. Let's take around 30 seconds to do that. I can give some example. Like, I love myself for always being honest. I believe in my dreams. I'm grateful to be alive. You can add anything you want to. Just experience the joy you feel after writing those words of affirmation and how you feel after writing them and reading them. What we did now is called self-affirmation. Scientific studies has proven that self-affirmation helps shift focus from stress to constructive problem-solving ideology. When I did this for the first time, I found it quite funny because I didn't think it was working. However, once I made this a habit, I could see that subconsciously my mind and my thoughts were a lot more positive. Instead of thinking of the problem, I used to think of the optimal solution to tackle the problem. So the way I used to think only changed because of this exercise. Finally, let's go to our last exercise, that is purposeful journaling. We all know how a journaling can be proven helpful if done regularly. But here, the idea is to write our personal objectives and beliefs that you would want to make it the reality and want to manifest in your life. Just take around 10 to 15 seconds and just write whatever you want to become. Just remember, it should be in present tense. I can give some example. Like, I'm eating a pizza right now. I'm an astronaut. I'm a Victoria's Secret model. I wish, but you can add anything you want to. I loved doing this from the start because it gave me a vision to pursue in the future. One of the core symptoms of anxiety is to feel hopeless. When I did this exercise, every day I used to be so excited to wake up, and I used to be very excited to go on to the day. So I loved doing this exercise from the starting. I'll tell you a little secret. I wrote a lot of things in that column, and most of them came true as well. But one of them was giving a TED talk, and here I am now. Thank you. Reflecting back on how to incorporate this technique in your daily life, sparing even 5 minutes to do this would create a positive impact in your lifestyle. You can just take this map and take this copy of map and hang it in your wall or in your study table. And when you wake up in the morning, you can just do this exercise. It will take 5 minutes. If not that, then you can take a picture and put it as a digital copy in your phone. And whenever you get the chance, you can do that. I know it can never be guaranteed for anyone. But a map like this helped me find myself a lot more better. It helped me connect to my spirit a lot more better. It helped me know myself a lot more better. As we all gather here today, talking about the TEDx theme, Essence of Humanity, both spirituality and humanity ties well with the theme. That is, connecting with ourselves first and then connecting with others. I hope we all trained our mind maps with some fun workout to seek spirituality today, by connecting with ourselves first and then connecting with others. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk, Jharna. That concludes our talks for the day. Thank you all the delegates for attending, as well as our courageous speakers for sharing their ideas worth spreading. We will end the conference with another networking opportunity. We are excited to have the opportunity for students to speak with our fantastic and knowledgeable speakers in a small group setting. Please bring all your curiosities and questions to the discussion happening in the two halves of the auditorium. Chantel and Callista will be on the left side of the entrance from the auditorium. Rochelle and Harrison would be on the right side, while Jerna and Terry would be outside in the foyer. Thank you all for coming to TEDxUNB 2021 Essence of Humanity. Have a good day.